অটো সিলেক্ট মানে
মানে আপনার মাঝে মাঝে অটো প্লে দিয়ে রাখলে এই অপশনের জন্য অটো প্লে হয়।
না না
ওটাই তো কইতাছি। অটো একটা র্যান্ডম একটা সিলেক্ট করে দিবেন যে আপনি না প্লে দেওয়ার পর অটো প্লে দেওয়ার পর এমন একটা সিস্টেম করলে হয়ে যেত। ওকে, দেখো হলো our story is so good you must suffer. Knowledge gaming, knowledge gaming. ওর eyes এমন কেন gaming এর what the fuck? Looks like someone came in his eyes. কে বলে ডিমারিয়ার বার্থডে?
মাইট বি ঠান্ডা লাগছে দেখা যায় করা।
ঠান্ডা লাগার কথা না, রাতে বেলা এই জানলা খোলা ছিল তো, জানলা খুলে গেম খেলে ওইটাই ঝামেলা করছে।
বুঝতে পারছি।
খেয়াল ছিল না জানলা খোলা।
দিয়ে আমি একটু স্যুপ বানাই লই আমার লিগে।
সুপার ফ্রেঞ্চ ফ্রাইস।
Holy shit. Ugh. কাশি
আচ্ছা
আমার উঠে গেছে আমি এখন পাওয়ার ব্যাংক কোনটা কার এটা আমার নাকি তোর
তোমার ইয়া করে তো আমার কাছে স্টিকার আসছিল তোমার একটা স্টিকার লাগাই তো তুমি ফ্লাক্সে যা লাগাইছো কি দিমু
সেভেন আপ আছে রে?
না আনতাম আম্মু না করছে। আব্বা কিবোর্ডটা হইলো এই যে ইয়ে আছে না
ক
কত জানো কিবোর্ড হইলো সবচেয়ে ভালো কিবোর্ড
detected. Op 4 has found a bomb.
Putting a cell in place. Was sponsored by the book summary service Blinkist. The first 100 people to use the link in the description will receive free unlimited access for 1 week, plus 25% off a full membership. Carl sat on his couch, looking back and forth between his phone and the ceiling, trying to figure out whether he was about to move 10,000 miles away to Australia, leaving his home, girlfriend, family, friends, job, and whole life behind, or not. The opportunity to move had suddenly come up when his best friend Novak decided he would be moving to Australia with his girlfriend. At age 27, Novak was facing a sort of quarter-life crisis and wanted to try and start something new and venture out into the world while he still felt new himself. Moving to Australia had been both Novak and Carl's dream ever since they were children and their families vacationed there. They both felt a weird natural connection with the colors, architecture, people, and feeling of the country. They visited again several times after throughout their teens and early 20s. On one of their trips, when they were 15, Carl and Novak agreed that they would move there when they were older. That and they would start a business together. This would remain their dream ever since. As they grew older though, like most dreams, it began to take a backseat to reality. Carl went to college for accounting in his hometown of Boston and got a job through a professor right after school that he couldn't turn down. Novak had a family member in a tech startup company in Boston, and as a result, he was given an opportunity to work for the company. However, after 4 years of Novak working for the company, it was suddenly acquired and he was out of a job. As part of the layoff, he was provided with a nice-sized severance package. And now, with some new extra money and nothing else stopping him, he decided he wanted to start a business and take a major leap of faith in his life. His girlfriend, somewhat of a free spirit, was on board with him. Novak came up with the idea of moving to Australia and creating an eco-friendly agri-tech company that utilized Australia's farming industry and its demand for local, farmed fresh organic food. 1 month later, Novak told Carl that he and his girlfriend were moving to Australia within the next couple months. He told him about the business idea that he and his girlfriend worked on together and showed him the beta website and app he created. It looked and sounded great and well thought out. Novak's girlfriend had experience working in logistics, and Novak understood the business and technology side. They were the perfect duo. When Carl didn't fully understand, Novak explained to him that he wanted him to be a partner in the business and that he should move to Australia with them. He told Carl it would be perfect and he could initially be in charge of sales, marketing, outreach, budgeting, and all the finances. He reminded Carl of their dream and told him how it would only get harder to move and try to create something like this. He sort of ridiculed the idea of Carl staying in Boston and working a corporate job for the rest of his life, as if that's what he really wanted. He told Carl how this business had a real chance to help people, how they could build a business model that would provide families with food who couldn't afford it and help the planet by contributing to a more sustainable food industry. Carl agreed with Novak's points, but told him that he needed a couple days to think about it, at least. Novak agreed and told him to let him know after he thought about it more. Over the next day, Carl thought about all the factors associated with the decision. He thought about how his mother had recently passed away just 2 years prior, and he and his father had become extremely close ever since. His father was not taking it well, and Carl's older brother had a strained relationship with his father. And so, in a way, Carl was all his father had left. He worried that if he left, it would break him. Carl also thought about his girlfriend Stephanie. They'd only been dating a little more than a year, but he had already started imagining a future with her. Things were going well, and they just seemed to click right. He knew that he couldn't expect her to go with him, and he knew a long-distance relationship was bound to fail, if she even agreed to it. He thought about all his other friends and family. He knew it wasn't as if they would cease to exist, but he also knew that in a way, their existence would fade a little. Perhaps so much so for some, that it would almost be as if they no longer existed at all. Then he thought about his current job. He worked for a great firm with great benefits, and he had finally started making some headway in the company. There was a lot of financial promise ahead of him, and he knew it was the more prudent career bet. But then, at the same time, he thought about how a greater risk meant a potentially greater reward. He didn't mind his current job, but it was fairly tedious and unexciting. He sort of just happened into it as a means of a conservative career path. He had always dreamed of being a part of building a business and creating a more meaningful impact and legacy for himself. Furthermore, he never particularly liked Boston. He had always wanted to move to the countryside ever since he was a kid. Specifically, he always envisioned a future where he lived in Australia. It was just one of those things that he had convinced himself of. And now, at 27, Carl felt an urge to leave home and forge his own life for himself while he was still young. He wondered how he could turn down such an opportunity to move to his dream location with his best friend and try to build something potentially important and helpful. How could he turn his back on his own vision of his future when it was right in front of him? For the following 3 days, Carl thought about the decision every waking second, ruminating back and forth between the potential outcomes of both choices. After 4 days, it seemed as if no matter how hard he tried, he made no progress in the decision. He remained equally unsure as to what he should do on the fourth day as the first. Both options seemed impossible to decipher. It wasn't an equation with numeric values or obvious reasoning. Each option was completely different, with their own entirely different set of variables and values, with no ability to know what any of it equated to. Carl had purposely held off sharing the situation with anyone else, so to avoid getting anyone upset before he had a better sense of what he was going to do himself. But by this point, he needed someone else's opinion. Over the next 2 days, Carl told his father, his girlfriend, 2 of his other close friends, and his aunt. He asked each of them what they thought he should do. Everyone gave him different answers. His dad and one of his friends said he should go. His aunt and his other friends said he should stay. His girlfriend didn't give him a straight answer, but her tears said everything Carl needed to know. They all had perfectly good, rational explanations for what they suggested, and yet Carl was no better off. He wondered how each answer could sound equally reasonable, but be completely contradictory. On the 6th night of indecision, Carl went on a walk around the city to try and clear his head. He walked late into the night, all around the city and along the harbor. Eventually, he found himself on a bench facing the water, completely secluded in a sectioned-off corner of a pathway. He sat and he thought. He thought about how his entire future was hinged on this one decision contained inside his head, that in his brain was the power to facilitate one move that would contort his entire world forever. And yet, he couldn't even know what choice was right. He thought about how insane this was, to be given the ability to make decisions, but not given the ability to ever know the consequences of them. He felt like he was blind and being forced to drive a car. He wished he could just know how both options would play out. Then he would know which one to choose. Overwhelmed, Carl looked out at the stars and moon glimmering against the water. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Suddenly, an older man walked past Carl and sat on a bench just a couple feet away. This jolted Carl to attention. He was immediately surprised by anyone being in the same secluded pathway and was curious as to why a man who looked to be at least in his 80s would be out alone at 2 a.m. Worried that the man was perhaps unwell or lost, Carl decided to ask him if he was okay. Politely, he turned and leaned over to the man and said, "How's everything going tonight?" The man slowly turned towards Carl and said, "Good. How about yourself?" "Good," Carl responded. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's great. It's a beautiful night, isn't it?" replied the old man. Carl looked up to the sky. "Yeah, it is," he agreed. Then they sat quietly. As Carl sort of jumped back and forth between contemplating his decision again and being distracted by the man's strange presence, the idea of asking the man his opinion occurred to Carl. He looked over to the man and asked him if he could ask him a question. "Yeah, sure, shoot," the man replied. Carl then went on and described his predicament. He explained the business, his job, his girlfriend, his best friend, his father, and everything else. Then he asked the old man what he would do. The man laughed a little, as if he had some experience or insight about the subject that was comical to him. "So you want to make the right choice, but you don't know what the right choice is?" the old man asked. "Yeah, exactly," Carl replied. "I'm completely lost. I wish I could just know what both would be like, you know?" "Yeah, if only," the old man said with another chuckle. "Wouldn't that make everything easier?" They sat quietly for a moment while the man thought. Then he said, "What if you just decide right now based on what I choose? Someone who basically doesn't know you at all. It'll be like flipping a coin, but the coin has a brain and understands the situation a little." Somehow this made sense to Carl, and after thinking for a moment, he agreed. He just needed it to be over. The old man paused and then quickly said, "All right, you're going." In a desperate clinging to reason, Carl asked the old man, "What made you choose that?" "I guess you'll have to find that out," replied the old man. Carl sat for a moment processing the fact that he was going to do what the man just said. Then, when he got up and went to thank the man and wish him a good night, he was gone. Carl figured he must have just left while he was thinking and didn't hear him say goodbye. 5 weeks later, Carl was on a plane with Novak and Novak's girlfriend, headed to Australia. 20 years would go by. Carl has remained in Australia ever since he moved. He now considers it home. Even after 20 years, it still feels amazing to him. A walk along the coast or into the countryside never ceases to amaze him and bring him a little peace. He and Stephanie broke up within the first 3 months of trying to maintain some form of a long-distance relationship. 1.5 years later, he met a woman named Natalie and fell in love almost instantly. They got married 3 years later, and they now have 2 healthy boys who have provided Carl's life with a great source of purpose and love. Carl, Novak, and Novak's girlfriend's business ran for about 6 years until unforeseen industry changes, operational problems, and regulations forced them to shut it down. They had tried pivoting the business model several times before it failed, all with no luck. During this time, however, Carl discovered a surprisingly strong passion for the farming process himself. A year after the original business ended, Carl bought a small indoor farm facility and started his own personal farming business. The business became profitable in the first 3 years, but the profit ceiling is low and it brings in a fairly small amount of money each month. His wife, who works as a freelance copywriter, doesn't bring in much money either. Because of the low income and the expenses of 2 children, the financial burden made Carl and Natalie horrible and bitter to one another. Their personalities just never quite clicked after the early phases of the marriage. They've stayed together for the kids, but they're miserable. Carl and Novak have remained close during and after the business and have formed a nice little friend group with others they've met along the way. Even though the original plan didn't work out, Carl feels connected with his work, and contributing directly to a local sustainable food industry gives him the occasional sense of pride. However, it has come at the cost of constant financial burden, heavy stress, and minimal free time. Carl isn't happy, but he isn't unhappy. He's a mix of both, depending on the time or day. As the years went by, Carl visited home less and less. He would go home and visit his father most Christmases and special occasions, but eventually he started missing a few years here and there. The last time he visited his father was at his funeral. At the service, Carl stood looking down at his father's lifeless body. He looked around at old friends, family members, neighbors, his brother who he hadn't seen in 5 years. He looked at his wife. He immediately needed to get some fresh air. After the service was over, he walked to the bar down the street that he would go to when he was in his 20s. As fate would have it, he passed by Stephanie. They noticed each other, hugged, and talked for a little while. Carl told her why he was home, and she said she was sorry. It was weird. He felt at ease, almost as if they didn't miss a beat. He felt more comfortable with her in that moment than he had in a long time. After a little, they said how great it was to see each other and went their separate ways. Carl sat at the bar drinking, alone. He thought back to the day he left and felt a weird sense of regret. He wondered if he did the wrong thing, leaving his father and family and Stephanie, leaving his good job that would have certainly paid away most of his current problems. He remembered how he let some stranger make such an important decision for him and suddenly felt like his regret wasn't even his, which made it feel exponentially worse. Later that night, Carl walked around the city by himself to try to clear his head. He walked down the edge of the city, along the harbor. He sat down on the same bench he sat on many years ago, facing the water. He sat back in the bench looking up at the stars, closed his eyes and breathed in deeply. He sat there for a moment. Suddenly, an old man poked Carl's shoulder. Carl, disoriented, opened his eyes to an old man standing above him. Before Carl could say anything, the old man asked him if he was okay. Carl, having realized he must have passed out on the bench, told the man he was fine and just fell asleep. The old man sat on the bench a few feet away as he explained to Carl how it was unsafe to fall asleep alone in such an area. "You're likely to get robbed or something," he said. Carl agreed and said it was an accident. He explained to the old man that he hadn't been able to get much sleep the last several days because he had been trying to make the decision about whether or not he would be moving to Australia. After talking for a little while and explaining his predicament about the business, his best friend, his girlfriend, his father, and everything else, Carl had the idea to ask the old man what he thought he should do. The man laughed a little as if he had some experience or insight about the subject that was comical to him. After a little more conversation, the man said, "What if you just decide right now based on what I choose? Someone who basically doesn't know you at all. It'll be like flipping a coin, but the coin has a brain and understands the situation a little." Stricken with a weird sense of deja vu, Carl agreed. He just needed it to be over. The old man paused for a moment and then quickly said, "All right, you're staying." In a desperate clinging to reason, Carl asked, "Why, what made you choose that?" "I guess you'll have to find that out," said the old man. 5 weeks later, Novak was on a plane for Australia, while Carl ate dinner with Stephanie and his father. 20 years would go by. Carl has stayed in the Boston area. He has climbed the ranks in his career field and has become chief financial officer for a nice mid-sized company. He is making an incredible salary. He married Stephanie a couple years after deciding to stay. They decided against having children because Stephanie was against it, and Carl wasn't sure himself and was willing to concede. Over the years, their love grew stronger and stronger. They fight like any couple, but there's a luster in their relationship that's rare and always present. They seem to just click, as if their personalities were meant to work together. Their relationship has provided Carl with a great source of love and purpose in his life. Carl had also remained close with his father and helped him into his old age. They've maintained a close bond that Carl cherishes. Most of Carl's other friends, however, have moved away or drifted apart. Novak and Carl sort of lost contact as well, only seeing each other once every year or so, if that. With no children and a higher income, money has never really been an issue and his personal life is fairly stress-free. He never really came around to liking his job though. As he climbed the corporate ranks, it came with increasing bureaucratic tedium, and he found an absurdity and pointlessness in it all. The longer he stayed though, the harder it was to leave. As he's aged, He's felt a sense of boredom, hollowness, and social isolation in his life. He isn't happy, but he isn't unhappy. He's a mix of both, depending on the time or day. On his 48th birthday, Carl had a party. Novak flew out along with a couple other old friends. At the party, Carl spent a good deal of time catching up with Novak, and Novak told him all about the last couple years in Australia. He told him how his 3 kids were doing and how well the business was doing. Carl asked Novak about some details in the business, and Novak explained how their third partner, who they had found when they first moved and had helped them get the business through some hard times, was now playing a key role in the business moving into foreign markets. He told Carl the business was helping thousands of families each month, and he was extremely proud of it. Then he told Carl he wished he would have been the person he was talking about instead. Carl saw the pride and enthusiasm in Novak's eyes when he spoke about his children and his business. Carl looked around at his co-workers, at his apartment. He suddenly felt a sense of doubt and regret in his life's path. He wondered if he did the wrong thing. He thought about how he let some stranger make such an important choice for him. The worst part wasn't even that his life was bad or good, but that in this moment, it almost felt like it wasn't even his to regret. At the end of the night, after mostly everyone went home, Carl went on a walk around the city by himself, moderately drunk. He walked down the edge of the city, along the harbor. He sat down on the same bench he sat on many years ago, facing the water. He sat back in the bench, looked up at the stars, closed his eyes, and breathed in deeply. Suddenly, an old man poked Carl on the shoulder. Carl, disoriented, opened his eyes to an old man standing above him. Before Carl could say anything, the old man asked if he was okay. Carl, having realized he must have passed out, told the man he was okay and just fell asleep. The old man sat on the bench a few feet away as he explained to Carl how it was unsafe to fall asleep in such an area. "You're likely to get robbed or something," he said. Carl agreed and said it was an accident. He explained to the old man that he hadn't been able to get much sleep the last several days because he had been trying to make the decision about whether or not he would be moving to Australia. Carl explained the situation about the business, his best friend, his girlfriend, his father, and everything else. As he did, Carl felt a weird sense of clarity. He couldn't put his finger on it, but he almost felt like he knew what each decision would be like he had already lived them. But yet, despite this, he still had no clue which one was better. While Carl was thinking about this, suddenly the old man interrupted. "What if you just decide right now based on what I choose? Someone who basically doesn't know you at all. It'll be like flipping a coin, but the coin has a brain and understands the situation a little." Carl thought for a moment, and then politely said, "No, I think I need to decide for myself. Thank you, though. I thought you said you couldn't figure out which choice was right," said the old man. "How are you going to get past that?" "I guess I'm not," replied Carl. "I spent the last week trying to figure out which choice was right, but maybe there isn't a right choice. Maybe there's just a choice." "What do you mean by that?" interrupted the old man. "Maybe some decisions aren't hard because there's a better option, but because there isn't one. This whole time I've been worried about regretting my choice by choosing the wrong thing, as if I could even know what I'm regretting. Regret would mean there was a right choice and I made the wrong one, but how could there be a wrong one? The only thing I can know is that on the other side of the decision, I'll be there, and if I'm there, no matter what path I go, there'll always be something to love, and there'll always be something to dread, and the only thing to regret would be not making the decision for myself. If you pick it, if anyone else picks it, if I leave it up to chance, it'll never be mine, or at least it won't feel like it." "So how do you suppose you choose now?" "I guess I do my best, pick one, and move on," replied Carl. "It won't be chance, it won't be certainty, it'll be somewhere in between, and it'll be the right choice." "So," said the old man with a continued smile, "which are you going to choose?"
Make your way to its location and defuse.
This video was sponsored by Blinkist. Blinkist is a book summary service that provides overviews and essential takeaways from thousands of nonfiction books. By condensing complete books down to around 15-minute audio and written summaries, Blinkist makes it easy to ingest the key ideas and frameworks of a book in a short, convenient amount of time. Covering an array of nonfiction genres with a wide variety of subjects in areas like philosophy, science, technology, health, business, and much more, Blinkist provides a diverse inventory of authors and titles for just about anyone. If you're interested in works of philosophy, Blinkist has great titles like Free Will by Sam Harris, The Wisdom of Insecurity by Alan Watts, Letters from a Stoic by Seneca, as well as plenty more. If you're interested in science or futurism, Blinkist also has great titles like Out of Control by Kevin Kelly and A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. Perhaps what's most helpful about Blinkist is that it allows you to easily determine whether or not you are interested in a particular author or book without having to invest too much time into finding out. With comprehensive overviews, Blinkist makes it easy to discover whether or not a book is what you are looking or hoping for, allowing you to judge more efficiently whether or not you are interested in reading the full version. With free time and attention spans constantly being challenged, this can be very helpful in engaging in more effective reading and learning. A 7-day trial is completely free and can be canceled at any time within the trial period. The first 100 people to use the link in the description will receive 1 free week of unlimited access, as well as 25% off a full membership. Again, if you're interested, please visit Blinkist.com/pursuitofwonder or click the link in the description. Thanks so much for watching in general, and see you next video.
The diffuser is no longer in your possession. One friendly operator remaining. Op 4 eliminated all.
Imagine you're going to a very important party with your partner, and you want to wear black shoes, but your partner wants you to wear brown shoes instead. How would you negotiate this situation? Many people believe that win-win or 50-50 is the best outcome in negotiation. If you also think so, then can you tell me what is the win-win in this example? Are you going to wear 1 black shoe and 1 brown shoe? It sounds ridiculous, right? That is exactly how Chris Voss thinks. He does not believe in win-wins. Chris is the author of a New York Times best-selling book called Never Split the Difference: Negotiate as if your life depends on it. Chris has worked for more than 20 years as a hostage negotiator at the FBI, dealing with kidnappers, bank robbers, and extreme terrorists. He found out that the knowledge he has learned as a hostage negotiator is also applicable to a wide range of business and personal life situations, since the fundamentals of human negotiations are essentially the same in any situation, regardless of age, gender, and ethnicity. Negotiation with a terrorist and negotiation with a businessman is based on the same principles. We negotiate every day, such as when you try to send the kids to bed early or when you convince a friend to go to a different restaurant. Our entire life is negotiation, and Chris says that negotiation is not about your way or my way. Negotiation is about finding a third way that makes both sides happy. For example, let's say 2 of your kids are fighting over a chocolate and they cannot divide it. It doesn't matter how you divide the chocolate, they are both unhappy and think that the other side got more. The third way solution in this situation is to ask one kid to divide the chocolate equally and the other kid to pick first. In this video, I will share with you the 5 lessons I learned from the book that will help you to become a better negotiator. Lesson number 1: understand first. Every negotiation begins with the universally applicable law that people want to be understood and accepted. Listening is the cheapest yet most effective thing we can do to get there. By listening intensely, you demonstrate empathy and a sincere desire to understand what the other side is experiencing. It sounds easy, but you cannot imagine how many people fail to listen. When the other side starts talking instead of listening, they think about what they will say, and when the other side stops, they give their pitch, regardless of what the other side just said. And the other side starts saying to himself, They didn't even listen to a word I was saying. I'm sure you've experienced this. Sometimes you talk to someone and you feel like you're talking about different topics. People usually yell in negotiations because they feel that they have not been heard. Everyone wants 3 things in negotiation. Number 1, to be understood. Number 2, respected. And only then get what they want from the negotiation. If you fail at listening, don't expect success from the negotiation. Lesson number 2. Negotiation is not a battle. It is a discovery. People who view negotiation as a battle of arguments become overwhelmed by the voices in their heads. But the truth is, negotiation isn't a battle. It's an act of discovery. The objective is to uncover what the other side wants. Is it money, time, respect, recognition, etc.? In order to do that, the author recommends several tactics. The first one is simply smiling. When you smile at someone, it's like reaching out to their brain and switching on positivity light. We are 31% smarter when we are in a positive state of mind, which also means if we are in a negative state of mind, it makes us 31% dumber. The second tactic is mirroring. Mirroring is simply repeating the last 3 or most critical words of what your opponent has just said. For example, your opponent, I have a very high expectation and want more money. You, want more money? Mirroring feels very strange at first, but if you practice, it will work like magic. Mirroring makes the other side vomit information. It's much more powerful than saying, what did you mean by that? When you say, what did you mean by that? You give your opponent a break to think and correct himself. On the other side, mirroring makes conversation run smoothly and makes the opponent reveal more information. After you have mirrored, stay silent for at least 4 seconds and let the mirroring do its magic. Lesson number 3, tactical empathy. Tactical empathy is understanding the feelings and mindset of the other person and hearing what is behind those feelings, especially focusing on identifying the emotional obstacles that are standing in the way of agreement. Once you have identified the emotion, then label it. Labeling simply means you summarize what your opponent just told you and give it back to him. Labels always start with, it seems like, it sounds like. For example, you see that your opponent talks very passionately about his students. In order to label it, you simply say, it seems like you care a lot about your students. Then stay silent and let the label do its magic. Labeling is effective for 2 reasons. First, it helps you to confirm that you have identified the right emotion. Second, it signals to your opponent that you truly understand him, which creates a stronger bond and makes your opponent like you. If a person likes you, it is 6 times more likely that you will have a deal. Empathy brings 2 brains together. The moment you feel empathy and see that there is something that makes you collaborate with me, then your brain power and my brain power get together to solve the problem. Another tactical empathy method is called diffusing negatives with labels. This is especially effective if you know that your opponent is angry and has bad feelings against you. Before you go to the meeting, sit down and think about all the negative things that your opponent might say against you during the meeting or negotiation. After you have identified all the negative feelings, then label them. For example, let's say you know that your client is very unhappy because your company missed the deadline and didn't deliver what was promised. Based on this data, you know that your client thinks that you are unreliable and unable to keep promises. So as soon as you start the meeting, you can diffuse the negative by saying, it might seem like we're screwing you and we're not capable of keeping our promises and delivering what was agreed upon. And because of this, you might even consider not doing business with us anymore. And you are absolutely right to think in this way. The moment you say this, your opponent thinks, he thinks like I do. I kind of like him. If you did not diffuse the negative, your opponent would spend hours explaining how bad he feels. But now that you have diffused all the negatives, your opponent will be more focused on the solution rather than complaining. Negative emotions and fear of losing affect our brain 3 times stronger than positive emotions. So help your opponent to get rid of the negative feelings, then you will have much better results. Lesson number 4. Start with no. Pushing hard for a yes doesn't get you any closer to a victory. Contrary to popular belief, No is the start of the negotiation, not the end of it. When you say yes to something, you feel committed or trapped. For example, if I come to you and say, "Can we talk for 5 minutes?" After you say yes, automatically your brain starts saying, "How long is 5 minutes actually going to be? Am I going to be stuck with her for 1 hour and go home late? Is she going to sell me her stupid idea again?" All those distractions in your mind stop you from focusing on the negotiation. You just want to get out of there as soon as possible. In comparison to pushing you for yes, if I came to you and said, "Is it a bad time to talk for 5 minutes?" You'd probably say, "No, it's not. But let me finish X, Y, and Z and meet you in 15 minutes at my desk." Since you started with no, you feel safe because you didn't commit to anything. Plus, saying no gives control to you. It was you who said, "Let's meet in 15 minutes." When you feel in control, it makes you think quicker, faster, and helps you to focus on implementation without any distractions. Also, after you said no, you answered 2 to 3 upcoming questions by yourself. I did not have to ask you where to meet, when to meet. You gave me everything I wanted without even working for it. Lesson number 5. That's right. That is right is one of the most powerful phrases in negotiation that you want to hear. To get this answer, you simply take your opponent's words and repeat back to him. It sounds simple and maybe a stupid thing to do, but works well. It puts the other side's empathy on steroids. If you get "that is right," then you can be sure that the deal is almost done. "That's right" is what we say when we feel completely heard and believe that the other side really understands us. We also say "that is right" at aha moments. Please be careful. If you get "you are right," it means you failed completely. The difference between these two phrases is tiny, but the implication is huge. When somebody says "you're right," they're most likely trying to get rid of you or end the conversation. Dealing with people is one of the hardest jobs out there. You can be perfect at your job, but if you have poor people skills, it's highly likely that you will have a tough time at work. If you want to improve your people skills, then check out the video you see on your screen. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful day. Today, I will summarize a book called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. I've prepared 6 life-changing and practical takeaways for you. I especially recommend watching the second takeaway, where I will explain the mistakes you do that are not allowing you to attract success and money to your life. You are probably familiar with this feeling. You work hard, you do everything you can, but somehow you can't get what you want. Quite worse, somehow you end up getting the opposite of what you want. But on the other hand, there are some people who don't seem to be even trying, but they get all the money and success. Why is that? Why do some people get what they want so effortlessly, while others struggle a lifetime without success? The answer is in the way they use their subconscious mind. Before I go further on this topic, let me first explain how your subconscious works. Takeaway number 1, the difference between the conscious and subconscious mind. The conscious mind is like the captain of a ship. The captain stays on the deck and can see where they are sailing and control everything. On the other hand, engineers who are responsible for controlling the engines and the other instruments can't see what is going on outside the ship. They are inside the ship, following orders coming from the captain. Engineers are like the subconscious mind. The engineers do not know where they are going, they follow orders. They would go on the rocks if the captain issued wrong orders. They obey the captain because he is in charge. He is supposed to know what he is doing. In the same way, your conscious mind is the captain of your ship, your body, and your environment. Your subconscious mind takes the orders you give it, based upon what your conscious mind believes and accepts as true. It does not question the orders. It does not engage in proving whether your thoughts are good or bad, true or false. It responds according to the nature of your thoughts. The subconscious mind is like the soil. Whatever seed you plant there, it will grow. Soil does not say, let me prioritize this apricot seed over another seed and give more nourishment because it will bear fruits one day. It grows whatever you plant there, without differentiating what seed you have planted. Your subconscious mind also doesn't understand a joke. It takes you at your word. Under hypnosis, if a practiced hypnotist holds a cup of water under your nose and tells you that it is a cup full of pepper, you will start sneezing. Or if a hypnotist tells you that you are a cat or dog, you will start behaving like a cat or dog. Your subconscious mind does not have the ability to argue or dispute. If you give it wrong information, it will accept it as true. That is why if you repeatedly say to yourself, I can't afford it, your subconscious mind takes you at your word. And as long as you keep on saying, I can't afford that car, that vacation, that home, you can be sure your subconscious mind will follow your orders. You will go through life experiencing the lack of all these things, and you will believe that circumstances made it so. It will not occur to you that you have created those circumstances yourself by your own thoughts. Takeaway number 2. You have a fundamental right to be rich. Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed of your desire to be rich. It is not only good, but very good to be rich. When your blood is circulating freely in your body, you are healthy. When money is circulating freely in your life, you are economically healthy. There is nothing wrong with being economically healthy. There is no virtue in poverty. It is an illness, like any other mental illness. If you were physically ill, you would realize there was something wrong with you. You would seek help and try to cure the condition at once. In the same way, if you do not have enough money constantly circulating in your life, there's something radically wrong with you. But have you ever thought about what is wrong with you and why you can't get what you want? For many people, there are 3 key reasons. You can also call them emotions that are holding them back from success. Reason number 1, envy. When I was a kid, playing with my friends in the neighborhood, we would very often see a young guy driving an expensive car. With my friends, we would all look at the car with envy and then say things like, God knows what kind of illegal things this guy did to buy such a luxury car at a young age. Or, why can such arrogant guys drive a luxury car, but not us? Basically, we would talk all sorts of envious things behind the guy's back without even knowing him or what he does. After reading books similar to this one, I completely changed my behavior. The reason I changed was that entertaining envious thoughts are devastating. It places you in a negative position. Therefore, wealth flows away from you instead of to you. If you get annoyed or irritated by the prosperity or great wealth of another, then you have pushed wealth away from you. Remember that you lose what you condemn. You cannot attract what you criticize or envy. Would you stay with a girlfriend or boyfriend who constantly criticizes you? Of course not. And neither will wealth. Wealth is like a sexy blonde girl sitting alone on the bar, waiting for the gentleman to compliment her beauty and buy a drink. If you approach her and start criticizing her beauty, do you think she will go out with you? Of course not. She will talk to the man who knows how to appreciate her. If you have thought envious things about anyone's wealth, stop doing it for your own benefit. The thought you have about the other person is your thought because you are thinking it. Therefore, you actually create in your own experience what you think and feel about the other person. The suggestion you give to another, you give to yourself as well, because your mind is the source that created those thoughts. Your subconscious mind records it and plays it back to you. These days, when I see a young guy driving a nice car, I truly feel happy for him. I feel happy that he is blessed to drive such a nice car. In my mind, I wish him the best and thank him for motivating me and showing me what is possible. I say to myself, if he can do it, I can do it as well. Reason number 2, you're trying too hard. Suppose you were asked to walk along a narrow plank that is on the floor. You would do it easily, without question. But now suppose the same plank was 50 meters high between 2 walls. Would you still do it? Probably not. Your desire to walk the length of the plank would come into conflict with your imagination. You would imagine falling down. You might very much want to walk across the plank, but your fear of falling would keep you from being able to do it. The more effort you put into conquering your imagination, the greater strength is given to the idea of falling. The thought, I will use my willpower to overcome my failure, leads to failure. It's like deciding not to think about a green hippo. The decision makes the idea of a green hippo dominate the mind, and the subconscious always responds more to the dominant idea. And since most of the time the dominant idea is failure, that is exactly what ends up happening. So what is the source of the problem here? Well, the problem is that you are trying too hard. Never try to force the subconscious mind to accept your idea by using willpower. Such attempts are doomed to failure. You will get the opposite of what you want. The effortless way is better. You are probably familiar with this situation. You go to an exam and you feel as you know it well. But when you face an exam paper, your mind goes blank. All your knowledge of the subject has suddenly disappeared. You can't recall a single relevant thought. The harder you try, the farther the knowledge seems to run. When you leave the exam room, the mental pressure eases. And suddenly, the answers you were hunting for so desperately a few minutes ago flow back into your mind. The mistake you made was to try to force yourself to remember. So what is the solution then? Relaxation. Don't push yourself so hard to find the solution or look hard for ways to reach your goal. Just know what the end result will look like and feel the happiness you would feel if you achieved that goal. Feeling and imagination are the most important factors for the subconscious mind. Your new idea must be felt in a finished state. If you do that, then your subconscious mind will work hard to find ways to reach your goal. You will start getting new ideas. You will start meeting new people and seeing new solutions. It's super important to be open to new solutions at these times. Sometimes we are so fixated on how the end solution should look like that we don't see the perfect solution presented by the subconscious mind. For example, a few months ago, I had a financial goal to reach. I wanted to make a certain amount of money by a certain date. So I would visualize my goal and imagine how great I would feel if I earned that much money. For a while, I thought that I would make that money through my YouTube channel. So I focused all my attention on the channel. But somehow, I could not get any results. But on the other hand, I was getting great real estate deals. At the time, I was not planning to buy a property, but somehow I was being pushed toward real estate. For a while, I ignored it because I thought the best way to reach the goal was through my channel, and focusing on real estate would push me away from my goal. But after a while, the signs got so strong that I had to give it a try. Within weeks, I found myself buying a new property. Everything went so smoothly, and I closed the deal very quickly. The most shocking part was when I was doing the numbers on the deal. The amount of money I was going to make was almost 100% identical to the amount I had in my financial goal. And let me tell you, it was not a small amount, and the difference was just a few dollars. My mind was blown away. I just sat there for a few minutes with a stupid smile on my face, thinking how it could be possible. Even now, I can't understand how it happened. Part of me wants to believe that it was just a coincidence. But a similar thing has happened to me 3 times. And in all 3 cases, the solution came from the most unexpected source. And in all 3 cases, the amount of money was almost 100% equal to the goal I had. The difference was always a few dollars. Not a few dollars less than my goal. The opposite. A few dollars more. The moral of this story is to explain to you the importance of being open to new solutions when working with the subconscious mind, and not getting stuck with one solution that you think is right. It is not your job to know how you will reach the destination. Your job is to know where you are going. Your subconscious mind will find the best route to get there. Imagine it in this way. When you go to a doctor, you first explain what the problem is and then listen to the solution, right? You don't suggest solutions to your problem. If you were that smart and knew the solution, you would not come to the doctor in the first place. If you have come to the doctor, then sit there and listen to the solution. Finding the solution is the doctor's job, not yours. In the same way, when you delegate something to your subconscious mind, listen to it and trust its power. Reason number 3, fear. I've heard this sentence a lot. I said affirmations and did visualizations, but I did not get results. Well, it is because you probably indulged in fear thoughts, perhaps 10 minutes later, and neutralized the good you had affirmed. Imagine that you got into a taxi and asked the driver to take you to your home address. But after a few hundred meters, you asked the driver to take you to a different address. After a short period, you changed the address again. If you keep changing the destination every few hundred meters, the taxi driver would be confused. Even if he wanted to follow your instructions, chances are he wouldn't be able. Where you would end up is anybody's guess. It's the same when working with the enormous powers of your subconscious mind. You must have a clear idea in your mind. You must arrive at the definite decision that there is a way out, a solution to the problem. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, the idea that realizes itself is the one to which we give the most concentrated attention. For example, if you have an exam or interview, most of the time you will probably think about failure. As a result, it is a failure that the subconscious mind brings into reality. The fear of failure creates the experience of failure. Here is a technique for overcoming fear. Suppose you are afraid of swimming. Begin now to sit still for 5 or 10 minutes 3 or 4 times a day. Put yourself into a state of deep relaxation. Now, imagine you are swimming. You feel the coolness of the water and the movement of your arms and legs. It is a real, vivid, and joyous activity of the mind. This is not idle daydreaming. You understand that what you are experiencing in your imagination will be developed joy that will surface.